Good morning. I want to look today at another parable. I just love the parables; they're brilliant. Uh, Sometimes I was just thinking this morning, but a parable is it's a wee bit like it's like light. But can you imagine light shining through a diamond ring? There's so many facets of it. You can go different ways. The light shines in all different directions, and that's the same with the parables. You can get several good, healthy meanings out of the parables, and I want to look at one today as a parable of the prodigal son or the lost son. And you get the story here in Luke 15, beginning at verse 11. Um, there's just a few points, a few bits of light in this that really spoke to me, three or four, and I want to highlight them. I say there's much more, but we don't have the time to do it all, to look at it all. So we'll look at this here, the story. So there's different lights here coming on, and it's really good. He speaks to the saved and the unsaved. Okay, verse 11. This is a story. He also said, a man had two sons. The younger of them said to the father, "Father, give me share of the estate it's coming to me." So he distributed the assets to them. Now it's interesting that he distributed the assets to both of them. So in other words, the son that wanted the money to go and enjoy it, the other son got his share too. So there was equal shares there. That's something I didn't pick on for a while. But so the other son wasn't left out, but the wayward son, he got his money too. Okay. So we distribute the assets to them. Not many days later, the young son gathered together all he had and travelled to a distant country where he squandered his estate in foolish living. After he had spent everything, a severe famine struck the country and he had nothing. And he went to work for one of the citizens of that country who sent him in the fields to feed pigs. What a downfall. There's something you learn there that, he wanted the money and he spent it foolishly and probably gathered up a lot of false friends, etc., etc. He wanted to do his own thing, basically, and he left a good home to do this. In other words, his priorities was all wrong. Of course, again, they weren't real friends he had, but anyway, he just slid down and down and down, and the money was spent, and he ended up in a very low place feeding pigs. Wow, not nice. And at verse 16, he longed to eat his fill from the carob pods. I looked that up, and that's sort of just the leaves of some fruit or some corn or something that the pigs were eating, and no one would give him anything. Where's his friends now? And verse 17, this is so important. When he came to his senses, and that's a fantastic saying there. He said, "How many of my father's hired hands have more than enough food, and I am here dying of hunger?" It's interesting there he came to his senses. A lot of us, you take even the believer who goes cold and does his own thing and wanders off, he can come to his senses in other words, he realises this is not good where I'm at. It's so important, that to evaluate where you are. And this guy did, and it's the same with a person who's not saved. He needs to realise, there's things ahead, and you need to sort of work them out. There's death, there's life, and you're all going to die. And where are you going? Are you going to heaven? Are you going to hell? This is something which we need to be waking up to. This guy woke up. Okay. So it says here, he came to his senses. And he said, "How many of my father's hired hands had more than enough food, and I'm here dying of hunger? I'll get up and go to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight.'" Now that's interesting there. He didn't say he sinned against the Father first. He says he sinned against heaven. He got his priorities right here. And that really interesting, isn't it? He disobeyed the father. The father was a great homer he was, and he didn't respect his father or his family in any way. But it says he sinned. He came to his senses. And I pray that a lot of people will come to their senses and realise what salvation is. You see, there's a blindness that Satan and the darkness has is put on us, and we have it in our hearts. You know, people hate the Bible, they hate to talk about Jesus because just the darkness is in us all, you know, as in them people, you know, in us, you know. How many of my father's hands have more than enough food to eat and I'm dying? Let us go up to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired hands. So he got up and went to his father. Action takes place. A lot of people know the gospel, they know of salvation, but they don't take action upon it. This guy did. That's so important, to act upon the truth. You know, you can't let life float by. So he make me like one of your hired hands. So verse 20, so he got up and went to his father's house. But while the son was still a long way off, his father saw him coming and was filled with compassion. And he ran and threw his arms around his neck and kissed him. And this is lovely here. There's a wee bit of light here I want you to catch too, for the person who's helping somebody. The father did not go looking for the son. The father did not go to the pig pen, but he was out every day looking for the son to come back. That's so important to grasp. You know, God does not force anything upon us. He puts it in front of us for the act. He will not force salvation upon you. It's a choice, it's a decision, it's a commitment, it's a surrender, it's a repentance that the person does. It's the same with the person who's backsliding too. You got to come to your senses and come to the Father. The Father does not go to the Son goes to the Father. That's so important. It actually talks in Galatians, you know, your spirit shall restore such one, and the spirit of gentleness and meekness, lest you yourself be tempted. That's a wonderful chapter too, on helping people. So it says, he ran and threw his arms around his neck and kissed him. And his son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. So it's interesting again, it's coming out again. He sinned against God. That's the main thing you got to recognize. And then he let the Father down. He says, and in your sight, I am no longer worthy to be called your son. What a bit of humbling here going on, really, isn't it? You've got to realize that, you know, the Lord exalts the humble. He doesn't exalt the proud, or, you know, you've got to humble yourself before God. You've got to realize what you are. And this guy really knew what he was now, you know, that he done wrong. He done wrong, you know. But look at the reaction of the Father here. It's wonderful, isn't it? And Jesus does the same. He realizes what we are and accepts us back, you know. But the Father told the slaves, quick, bring out the best robe and put it on him and put a ring on his finger. Full restoration here for the backslider, or for the person who wants to give their life to Christ. You get the best from the Lord. Not financially. You get the best knowing that your heart is clean before him, because Jesus makes it clean because of the cross. Okay? It says, quick, bring out the best robe and put it on him and put a ring in his finger, sandals on his feet. This guy was really down. He had nothing, you know. And bring the fatted calf and slaughter it. Let us celebrate with a feast, because my son of mine who is dead and is alive again. Lovely in the scriptures, it talks about in Ephesians about being made alive, and I think it's Colossians 2 about being made alive, being born again. He was lost and is now found, and they began to celebrate. But here, there's a wee twist here. Look at this. Now his older son was in the field, and he came near the house and heard the music and dancing. So he summoned one of the servants and asked these things, what's meant. Now he didn't go into the party. He stood outside the party. Again, you know, some believers can huff a while lot about things, you know, because, you know, your brother is here, he told him, and your father has slaughtered the fatted calf because he has him back safe and sound. And he became angry. Oh, terrible, isn't it? He didn't want to go on. So his father came out and pleaded with him. Now, it's interesting, the father here came to the son. He didn't come to the other son. He came to this son, you know, and he replied to his father, look, I have been slaving many years for you, and I have never disobeyed your orders, yet I've never gave a young goat, so I was never given a goat to celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came in. Bitterness, you see, don't let bitterness come into your heart as a believer, okay? But when your son came, he has devoured your assets with prostitutes and slaughtered the fatted calf for him. Son, now look at the loving action of the father. This is a picture of Jesus. Son, he said to him, you're always with me and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice. See, it says in the Bible that every sinner who repents, the angels rejoice in heaven. Not lovely, but who repents. Uh, uh, we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. I pray today that you be found. If you're backslidden and you've gone cold in the Lord, come, get out of the pig pen and come back to the Father. Lord bless us all. Bye.